It's your boy, Sergeant Hooked on Heroes, hitting with another review / recap for Ohsama Sentai King-Ohger, episode 13 now, I think, somewhere around there. Yeah. Pretty entertaining episode, overall, and I really enjoyed most of it. But look, 1 second, let me just take a little break here just to tell you. We will be recording tonight as of Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Henshins and Homies podcast with our guest Mint Bari, talking about the music of Tokusatsu, and then also talking about our favorite gimmick items. I wonder if I have a few. And I'm going to also try to record something of a review of sorts of Shin Kamen Rider. I just saw that this week, and I definitely want to give my thoughts on it overall. But yeah, so anyway, as far as King-Ohger is concerned, start up this week's episode. We get a bit more with Death Narak and Kanajim. They are talking in their little, Bug Narak base, and he has his tentacles out, and he's like absorbing from the earth, and he's healing himself from the wounds he sustained from the last battle with Jeremy. Talking about how he's going to get revenge on him and blah, blah, blah. And the three, greater shoe gods are like underneath in like this little like darknessy type area being kind of held or whatever. And so Jeremy comes in out of nowhere and gives to Death Narak the gem for God Bata. Essentially throughout this episode, he gives a gem to each one, like to him, he's already given one to Himina. I think he's one for himself. But, like I said, Jeremy is trying to reiterate the fact that he wants to, be able to unite the people, right? That he doesn't want the Bug Narak to be fighting the humans or the humans to be fighting the Bug Narak, that they should all be getting along. And Death Narak doesn't really give him much hope that he's not going to keep, being a menace. But Jeremy continues on anyway. So most of this episode has to do a lot with Jeremy interacting a lot with Yanma. Yaman talks more about his backstory, how Nikospa was actually one of the first places that got hit hardest by the the fury of the gods, where a lot of stuff got destroyed a long time ago. And that, Gin was the one that found him and kind of like basically raised him and gave him his first computer, which is what he used to build up Nikospa to what it is currently. So I like that we're getting a lot more backstory on the characters, and that we're getting it through the lens of Jeremy, who has some slight random connection in the background to things they have going on, and has set like certain things in motion. I think that's a really, really interesting way to do it. Like I said, for the longest time in Sentai, there's been a few exceptions, but it's felt like the Sixth Ranger has been kind of just its own separate nebulous thing way over here somewhere, and here's the team, and they're just way over here, and we'll have fight. Here's my story. Wait, how about my mecha debut? But this is the first time in a while where I felt they're very well interconnected, especially with the greater purpose and lore, tidbits we've gotten about Jeremy and what he does within the world and what he's trying to do. But yeah, and what's his name? Yama is talking to Jeremy and says, hey, I didn't create your Kimono Slayer, your blade. How did you perform in Ogai Buso? How the King's Raiment? How did you perform that? And he's still not really telling him a whole lot, just kind of saying how it's his own technology and blah, blah, blah. And that if he wants, that his Venomic shooter, which he was given to by his mother, it was given to him by his mother, that he'd be willing to let him see that. But that he wants him to treat it with respect because it's very important to him. And he uses a lot of the illusion, like, fake and all that kind of stuff, and kind of messes with him a little bit. Shiokara thinks he's on fire at one point. It's very funny. But he fucks off and he leaves the Venomic shooter with Yanma. And Yama and the group come up with a plan for some reason to just embarrass and laugh at Racules by making this giant whoopee cushion, basically, that will make a giant fart happen and he'll just be embarrassed. I don't know why. It doesn't really have like a purpose. And Gira wants to get back in there, of course, to figure everything going out with the greater shoe gods. So they dress him up to look just like Sebastian. So he goes in there looking just like Sebastian and to help out with everything. Yeah, and so overall, we're really getting most of that focus. They're in Shugadam for a while. There's a few little fights with some henchmen. And we get Jeremy basically saving one of the Bug Narak enemies and creating basically his own retainer. And he gives himself the title of the Void King, the King of the In-Between, that all beings that are half anything are welcome with him, and that he wants to rule over the world for it to be, equal for everybody. Which you can kind of get behind and respect. I mean, yeah, he's doing it in kind of a forceful way, but I wouldn't necessarily say he's evil necessarily. But he has some really good moments throughout with the team. There's many moments he has through with many of the team members, kind of getting to know them and kind of challenging what they know. He even gets to talk to Hercules for a while and challenges him about, well, do you know about the history of King-Ohger? He's like, well, yeah, of course. Well, he's like, what about the history before 2,000 years ago? And Hercules is stunned because he really doesn't know a whole lot of what happened before that. And so, Jeremy kind of, illuminates this and talks about how, the humans existed, the Bugnarak existed, and whatever, and they weren't really at odds with each other until, closer to the history everybody knows of the King-Ohger and blah, blah, blah. And I think something makes mention, like, again, why he is able to do the King's Raiment, or the Ogai Buso. And he mentions that his father would have been, the sixth king, but that he was ousted before, any of that could happen because of his forbidden love with his mom, who's a Bugnarak, and blah, blah, blah. So again, there's a lot of really good, like, Jeremy tidbits throughout, which I really enjoyed, and some really good, like, overall lore tidbits. I do think the episode leaned a little too far into being silly with, like, the fart joke stuff and everything, but I do like that it was the setup for Jeremy saying, well, what was this? Like, you used my technology to play a prank, like a joke, like that's disrespectful to my stuff. I told you to treat it with respect, and Yama acted like he didn't remember, and he's like, no, but I did tell you. And so he's pissed, and so we do get the debut of God Tarantula, who comes down and through its webs is able to kind of puppeteer other shoe gods. It's able to take control of them and do with it what it wishes to do, or what he wishes for it to do, which is really cool. It's a really cool aesthetic that the Six Rangers mecha is able to inadvertently control the actions of the other mecha. I think that's a really interesting aesthetic for God Tarantula. So I did really enjoy that and his interactions with the team. He has a lot of really good dialogue pieces, different things that he says with each of them. And I'm sure we're going to continue to get that for sure for the next few episodes, is like, kind of team-up-y little episodes where he, goes one-on-one with one of the team members and kind of talks about things. But there's a Bugnarak introduced in this one that we've seen before, but I guess didn't die. This, like, general type bug thing, whatever, that I think may have been the one that disguised itself as Yama when Giro was fighting Hercules. It keeps talking about throughout that it really doesn't want to, do a whole lot and blah, 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 and it's not really trying to, do as many destructive things as the Bugnarak do and all of that. And, that kind of gets at Jeremy a little bit, and he kind of, like, respects that, and that's why near the end of the episode, he ends up, I think, taking the general with him to pretty much become his retainer, which is kind of cool and wacky, and I kind of like that. It's interesting to see that he would have a retainer that would be a Bugnarak. So you have this goofy, giant, doof-ass, monster suit walking around with them is just absolutely whimsical. But overall, this was a decent episode. I didn't, love it. It was not garbage necessarily, but I do wish that less time was focused on the fart situation, the fart jokes, and the whoopee cushion and whatever, than there was to the other pieces, which are vastly more interesting. Things about God Tarantula, things about, Jeremy interacting with the other team members, and things of that nature, I think would have made it a better episode. I don't think it was, again, an awful one, but it has room where it could have been better, I think. Next week looks really interesting, where we're getting, again, another episode with him one-on-one pretty much with another team member. This time it's Himina, wanting to understand more about her and blah, blah, blah. Because during this episode, she asks Gira if he can go talk to Scorpion, Scorpion, God Scorpion. And he says that he's tried, but that he can't do it, that they're not talking back and blah, blah, blah. Which I think it's kind of screwed up, kind of messed up when you think about it, that his, whole gimmick of being able to speak to the shoe gods isn't working. But essentially near the end of it, I'm pretty sure, if I remember right, Jeremy does take back the gems for himself and just realizes that it's going to be really difficult to get both sides to work together. Now, again, I don't know what that's going to mean, if he's going to make, Deathnarak redeem himself and become a good guy. What I see happening is Deathnarak and Kanajin both being wiped out, and Jeremy kind of taking over control of the Bugnarak, and convincing them to help humanity rather than fight against them, which might mean they would need the introduction of a third enemy faction other than the Ragnarok, but I don't know for sure if that's exactly what they're going to go for or not. I will give props to this episode, of course, about seeing more about Jeremy and his backstory and backstory for Yama and how Nakosupa came to be. And any time that I get to see Spider Kumanos transform and fight is going to be a badass moment. But overall, again, not a like banger stellar episode, but definitely a decent one, getting us to the next few episodes, which are clearly going to be more teaming up, Jeremy with another character, another team member type episodes, I think. Which I think will work for him. I think it'll be cool to see him bounce off the other characters and get to kind of fill in certain gaps and details they don't even know about. So overall, score-wise, I'd probably sit it somewhere around probably an 8 out of 10. Somewhere around there, maybe a 7.5. Again, not an awful episode, but not nearly as exhilarating and as exciting as the rest have been. And not that I at all have any like foreboding feeling that it's, oh god, this means King-Ohger is not going to be great going forward. Oh, it's already lost steam. No, I just wasn't the biggest fan of the episode. As I said, for content this week, this review, clearly my Geats review, and then also going to try to, like I said, record a review for Shin Kamen Rider. I'm going to get that together pretty soon here. I watched that on Wednesday with my good friend Tyler. We both loved the fuck out of it, but I want to get into some details because there were some good and some bad. And kind of talk about that and the overall legacy of it and what it means for it being as successful as it was. If you guys don't know, besides that one-day showing of those showings with the English subtitles across the country, they also, because of fan outcry about it, on this coming Monday, June 5th or whatever it is supposed to be a, another screening of it, again, in certain select theaters. So if you haven't seen it yet, if you're even just a little bit of a Kamen Rider fan or a Tokusatsu fan in general, please go see it, support it, buy some tickets, check it out if you can, if you got a theater near you. I did it through what's called Fathom events. That might help you guys out more to look it up through Fathom events, which will then filter it down to your area and any theater that does Fathom events and would have the showing. But definitely check it out. I'll put out my review to kind of talk about things. It will have some spoilers eventually. I'll try to keep it spoiler free at the start and then eventually get into some details as they go on and kind of give you guys a warning. But I definitely want to talk deep about it. So, but anyway, as always, stay hooked on Heroes. I will talk to you later. Bye.